Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
And I am Ken.
And you may recognize our voices from the podcast Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved. But today we're here to tell you about a nonprofit organization we have created called the Florida Themis Project.
Themis is the Greek goddess of justice, if you're wondering about the name.
The Florida Themis Project aims to support loved ones and victims of unsolved crime by financially contributing to various types of investigative tools, including DNA testing.
We also help the families and loved ones of missing people by assisting with awareness campaigns, helping in ground searches, and any other assistance that we can provide to the families.
We're asking you for your help to spread the word and grow our organization so we can help as many people as possible.
So please be sure to check out our website at floridathemisproject.org for info about how you can help or donate.
We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Florida Themis Project.
Even simply sharing our posts on social media is very helpful.
So thank you in advance, true crime friends, for your help and support. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I am Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved.
This is a Tomahawk Media production covering true crime,
missing people,
unsolved crime,
and cold cases.
Please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, and links to all of our social medias.
On the website, we also have a virtual tip jar, so you can leave us a tip and we'll give you a shout out on the show.
Another way to support this show is to join our Tomahawk Media Patreon.
On Patreon, you'll receive early and ad-free episodes for all of our Tomahawk Media shows, and depending on what tier you choose, bonus content and special gifts from us might come right to you.
Yes, and you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/Tomahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media. There's also going to be a link in the show notes. Bryan Vladek Hasel was born in Russia along with his older biological sister Irina. He spent the first 5 years of his life in a Russian orphanage until he and Irina were adopted by an American family in 2004. He grew up in Florida with his parents, Steve and Cheryl Hasel, and 7 other siblings. After high school, Bryan, who now preferred to go by his Russian birth name, Vladek, or Vlad for short, joined the United States Marine Corps in 2018. But he didn't settle in well to Marine Corps life and would be discharged a year later for failure to adapt. To be clear, as apparently there has been some confusion on this, Vladek was discharged from the Marines with a general discharge under honorable conditions. He told his family that his past childhood struggles from his early years in Russia played a role in his discharge, but the family isn't 100% sure on what happened there. According to his sisters, though, this may have just been something he told them because he wanted to get out. After leaving the Marines and moving around a bit, Vladek settled in East Orlando, Florida, where he lived with his dad, Steve. Bryan Vladek Hasel was 23 years old when he was last seen on November 6, 2021, at a coffee shop, Foxtail Coffee, on University Blvd in Orlando, Florida. Vladek is described by those who knew him as the kindest person in the world. He grew up very close to his sister Bethany, who has now become his biggest advocate. They shared a friend group growing up. She described him to me as outgoing, curious, and willing to chat with anyone about anything. But according to his family, as he got older, he struggled with what he wanted to do with his life, especially after leaving the Marine Corps. His father suggested in an April 2022 interview with WESH 2 News that Vladek may have been depressed. From the little I've been able to gather, something odd was definitely going on with Vladek before he disappeared. Actually, the last concrete sighting of Vladek Hasel was on police body cam footage as he was being trespassed from his favorite coffee shop, Foxtail Coffee, due to other customers complaining about his bizarre behavior. Vladek apparently walked into Foxtail Coffee on University Blvd, bought a coffee, and was pacing around inside the establishment while listening to music with his headphones. Foxtail employees say this was actually normal behavior for him when he came in, but this time, while he was there, he reportedly pulled out a pocket knife and set it down on the table. Another customer saw this, felt uncomfortable, and told Foxtail workers that Vladek was making him uncomfortable and he was going to leave. This customer did not mention the pocket knife to the Foxtail worker. But later, the customer came back and told the Foxtail worker that he also saw Vladek with the pocket knife. Since Foxtail has a zero weapons policy, they decided to have the sheriff's office come out and issue a trespass warning. By the time the sheriff's office arrived, Vladek had already been long gone and was completely unaware that a complaint had been made. The Foxtail manager states that none of the employees witnessed the pocket knife incident and that there was not surveillance footage of the encounter. But according to Vladek's family, he had recently purchased a pocket knife and did carry it with him. When questioned about this, he told his family it was for protection. So was Vladek scared of someone? His family says in the days that followed, a worker at Hasel's apartment complex reported seeing him at the apartment complex's basketball court. He was known to spend time smoking and singing in the woods behind the basketball court. According to his family, he spoke frequently about how eventually he wanted to go off and live in the woods, but said he wouldn't do that until after his dad passed away. He apparently didn't want to leave his dad alone or for his dad to be blamed by family or anyone else for him leaving. In the same article with Wesh 2 News, Vladek's father, Steve, expressed his feelings on this. My concern is maybe he walked into the woods and never came out. Maybe someone followed him into the woods and caused him to not come back out. In October of 2021, Vladek had taken a new intense interest in religion. Because of this, he gave away a lot of his possessions and decided to get rid of his phone and tablet as he considered those items distractions from getting into heaven. He did get a flip phone, however, for emergencies because his family insisted. This phone, along with Vladek's wallet, were left behind in his apartment when he disappeared. His family states on their website that Vladek made comments like, "What is the point if we can just be in heaven?" One of Vladek's passions was helping out the homeless, often giving them money, even if he himself had little to nothing. Vlad was always kind and generous, but it seemed that as he was struggling during this time, helping the homeless was a way for him to feel useful. Unfortunately, hanging around with the homeless community put Vladek in contact with some unsavory characters. On one occasion, he even gives his credit card to a homeless couple to use, and they take advantage of his generosity. So we've seen his photo all over social media and even on billboards in Orlando, but not much else is known about Vladek Hasel and his disappearance. What we do know mostly comes from the family's timeline on their website and our interview with Vlad's sisters, Jody and Bethany, which we will share with you in this episode. In the days and weeks leading up to his disappearance, his new set of ideals regarding things of this world being a distraction from heaven seemed to take a firmer hold. On Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, Vlad was driving his dad's car and it broke down. He walked back to the apartment and he was upset, worrying that his dad would be mad. Steve Hasel isn't angry and completely understands. The car is old and the engine needs to be replaced. On Thursday, November 4th, 2021, according to a friend, Vlad called him and asked him if he could crash for a night or two at his house. Phone records show an outgoing call to a number believed to be this person on November 4th at 7:13 p.m. and was a 5-minute call. On that same day, Vladek made comments to his father about archangels and demons and how you have to be dark to kill the dark. His father claimed Vladek wasn't making much sense. On Friday, November 5th, Steve leaves with Vladek's mom, Cheryl, to meet Vladek's sister, Bethany, and her friends in Tennessee for Bethany's birthday. This was a scheduled 10-day trip, and Vladek was invited to go along for the trip, but he preferred to stay home. It was not uncommon for him to prefer to stay home or to back out on plans at the last minute. Steve gave Vlad $100 in cash and a credit card. He also offered to buy more groceries, but Vladek believes there's enough food in the house and declines. Steve tells Vladek that he's expecting a package to arrive while he's out of town and asks him to bring it inside when it arrives, and Vladek says he will. On Saturday, November 6th, at 1:59 a.m., Vladek called his sister Irina. This call lasts for 6 minutes. It is not unusual for them to chat at very late hours. Irina claimed that Vlad gave her no clue he was going to be going anywhere and the conversation was normal. The same day, November 6th, at 7:11 a.m., Vladek arrived at Foxtail Coffee Company. Foxtail makes the decision to call law enforcement and have Vladek permanently trespassed because of the customer's complaint from the night before, that he displayed a weapon. We have watched the body cam footage of Vladek's encounter with the Orlando County Sheriff's deputy, and the whole encounter lasted a little more than 14 minutes. In the video, Vlad appears to be a bit bewildered, not really understanding why he's being trespassed from his favorite coffee spot. Remember, he was gone the night before when the customer complained and the manager called the police, so he was in the dark about all of this and basically blindsided the following morning. But Vladek calmly left when the officer asked him to and appeared to be walking west toward the Wawa convenience store. Orange County Sheriff's Office originally tells the family Vladek was trespassed for being, quote, hyperverbal and no mention of the pocket knife. The officer notes the time of 8:26 on the trespass warning. This is the last official sighting of Vladek Hasel. So we met Vladek's sister, Bethany Hasel, this past September at CrimeCon in Orlando, where she was advocating for her missing brother. We invited her and her other sister, Jody, to the show to fill us in on some questions we had and tell us a bit more. We're going to play the first half of that interview for you after this quick break. We are here now with Bethany and Jody Hasel. Now, these are Vladek's two sisters. Are you guys younger, older?
Older. Vladek is the baby of the family.
Okay, and I saw that he grew up, he was adopted from Russia when he was 5 years old, and he had 7 siblings. Is that correct?
There's 8 siblings altogether from my family. It's a blended family. Our oldest 2 sisters, one's from my mom's previous relationship, and my oldest half sister is from my dad's previous marriage. Then there's the 4 of us, and then Irina and Vladek we adopted from Russia. They're the youngest.
A total of 8. And did you all live in the same house growing up?
So it was kind of like seasons of life, I'd say. The oldest 4 kind of grew up together, and then Jody, my brother Jonathan, me, and Kristen kind of grew up together. And then when we adopted Irina and Vladek, my brother Jonathan was leaving for college a couple months later. So then it was really just, I was kind of the oldest of that time period. So it was me, Kristen, Irina, and Vladek, and we grew up together.
Okay. So I kind of want to paint a picture of who Vladek was. And I noticed in my research and on your timeline, there's really not much information aside from he was adopted in 2004 at age 5. And then all of a sudden he graduated high school in 2018 and joined the Marine Corps. What was his life like during that time period in between those 2 significant events?
Vladek is always on the go. His childhood, he's always outside playing with the neighbor kids, climbing trees. We had a 40 foot tall sycamore tree in the front yard, and my mom couldn't find him, trying to call him in one afternoon, and she looked up and he was way up 30 feet up in that tree. He was an outdoorsy kid growing up, always getting into something. He played soccer, t-ball, basketball, loved playing sports. Basketball has always been his favorite. He would go horseback riding with me. I used to have a horse. So at that point in time, it was just me and him living at home. So he would go out to the barn with me and we would go horseback riding together. During those middle school years, when it was just kind of him and I living at the house, he would hang out with my friend groups so that my friends were his friends. And we would have game nights and movie nights at the house. We would have New Year's Eve walk-ins each year where 20 or 30 high school schoolers came over, and he would hang out too, playing Wii games and board games. And that's always something that he, even right before he went missing, still talks about, those New Year's Eve walk-ins and how much fun they were and how he missed them. And because we did them for about, I think, a good 10 years almost, but like kind of reminiscing about those times and hanging out with friends. He really enjoyed hanging out with friends growing up and doing different events like that.
So he wasn't much of an introvert. I mean, he was active and involved with everybody going around. Because I kind of got the sense, based on, like Lauren said, there wasn't much to talk about, that he was literally like reserved and kept to himself, but that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah, his childhood, he was always talking with people and making conversations. Like even when we were in Russia and he didn't know any English, he would start kind of, as a typical 5-year-old, not wanting to stay with you. So kind of wander a bit, and, we're trying to get him to come closer, and a stranger kind of just stopped and spoke with him and had a stern talk, pretty much, it's a busy place, you got to stay with your family, that kind of thing. And he started to have a conversation with that couple, and they ended up inviting us over to their house. And we had dinner with them. Like, he just was always starting up conversations growing up. And more recently, though, I will say he's not as outgoing. He's kind of isolated himself since leaving the Marines, and especially since COVID, as many of us have isolated ourselves more so. But he would still start up conversations with strangers. They would just not be deep friendship kind of thing. He would just start up random conversations to hear about people's lives and see if there was a way that he could help, kind of thing.
So he grew up always wanting to be a Marine. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then I'm sure when that didn't work out and he was discharged, that had to have really kind of messed with his psyche, or, that's the sense I got, that was sort of a breaking point for him. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, like looking back, it really seemed like he was struggling to find his footing after leaving the Marines and trying to figure out what was next for him. Just not knowing what was next, because so much of his life, that was his goal. And then when it ended up not being what he thought it would be, like, he thought he would be a soldier, out fighting the fight. But he ended up having like a desk position, and Vladek being like, he doesn't sit still very well. He's always on the move. So that was not jiving very well with his personality. And he was told that he could get a discharge. And he had mentioned to them that it was bringing up memories of his childhood in Russia at the orphanage. So he did get a discharge, and it was, the paperwork says a general discharge, but in parentheses it says under honorable conditions. So it wasn't a dishonorable discharge. It wasn't technically an honorable discharge. It was just one that doesn't count against him, but he also is not eligible for VA benefits.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually a veteran. I'm pretty familiar with.
Sorry. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. No, I'm familiar. So you can speak openly about that kind of stuff and I'll understand what you're saying.
Like, it's all new to us because Vladek was like the first one that served or like enlisted. So right. Like when he talked about his discharge, and he had said it was an honorable discharge. So that's what I had been saying for the longest time. But like, I guess in technicality it was a general. So like, I've received some backlash, so I'm just trying to be as clear. I'm just reading what the paper says, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. No, you shouldn't receive backlash for that. That's silly.
Yeah.
But do you think that he really was getting sort of maybe some kind of PTSD issues from his childhood in Russia, and that was the reason? Or does he just, maybe he didn't like it and he was trying to find a way out? I knew several people that just wanted out. I was in the Navy, and they did the failure to adapt discharge.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he told us, that it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And like, he spoke with someone and they gave him a way to get out, kind of thing, and he took it.
So you I don't think he was having like trauma flashbacks or anything?
I don't really think so. Not, but I can't say 100% for sure. I know the boot camp can be rough, or so I've heard. So I don't know if like that affected him at all, but just an outsider looking in, it seemed more like he didn't like being behind a desk, which he's never had that kind of job or position ever before. Just always on the move.
Yeah, that's understandable, because if you're somebody that wants to be involved, be out there, you have this vision of what everything is supposed to be. And then when you get installed into your position and it's nothing that you imagined, then there's probably some mental problems that go on with that. I mean, you would probably be depressed. You would be upset. You're just not happy about your situation. That's definitely understandable.
Yeah, disappointing. Especially if it's something you've planned your whole life.
Yeah, put it up. Yeah, for sure.
So he gets out of the Marines, and then he comes home. And now when he gets home, I mean, is he happy to be home? Did he seem like things, when he first came back? Because I've read a lot of stuff online just looking into Vladek's case, and some places take you down different paths, as you well know, I'm sure. But some people were curious if they were wondering if he came home and there was a problem, or if everything seemed like it was good. And this, where you talk about he gets us in depression, was that later on, or basically how was his reaction when he first got home?
He was content. It wasn't the ideal situation. My dad was still with his wife at the time. They had a 2-bedroom condo. They already had a couple living with them. So it's a small space. So Vladek was staying on the couch in the meantime, and just kind of figuring out what was next for him. And dad could, we now look back and he can kind of see like some periods of what was perceived depression, and he didn't want to push him too much, especially just getting out of the Marines. Dad's wife at the time, was really trying to encourage him to get a job, and, it wasn't being received well from Vlad, and dad didn't want to push him. And there was also other marital things going on at that time. They ended up leaving the situation, staying in hotel rooms for about 3 to 4 weeks, I think it was, before they got the apartment complex at the place. And then dad ended up later on divorcing. Just there was other things going on, but just divorcing his wife at the time. So then it was just dad and Vladek after that.
Bethany fast forwarded a little bit because he did spend some time with my sister Carrie right after he got out of the Marines. Just like he was living with her a little bit before he went into the Marines. And while he has been living with her, she's a single mom with a baby. So he's done a really great job with keeping a job. And helping her pay her bills and things like that, like helping. So that was a more structured environment, and it was more like he didn't have a choice. If he was going to be staying with her, he would have to work full time. So for the first, I'd say year and a half or so after he left, he was with her, and he had like a routine,
Jody's correct. He was with Dad from September to December, January of 2019, and from January to June 2020. And he did do well. And then he was back with Dad, and that's when they ended up going to hotels in October of 2020.
So when exactly did he move to Orlando with your dad?
He was with Dad in Orlando after the Marines from like
right
September
after?
19 till like the end of the year. And then he moved in with Carrie like December of 2019 or January of 2020, somewhere around there. And he was with Carrie till about May of 2020. And that's where he really thrived with, he got a job there at the hospital, helping Carrie out a lot. It was right at the beginning of COVID, so daycares were shutting down and Carrie had to stay home more. But Vladek was really able to carry the weight financially and just be able to work more to help support everybody. And right around the summer of 2020,
it was actually more like late summer, August, because Carrie moved her daughter and Vladek from Michigan to New Hampshire to live with her partner and his kids. And so that was a different environment, a smaller living space for a lot of people. And Vladek had a hard time finding a job, and then he decided he didn't want to work at all. And so that's when he went back to Orlando to live with my dad.
Now, are you all originally from somewhere other than Florida? Are you from Michigan or New Hampshire? I mean, Carrie lives in Michigan. Was that because she stayed there? Is she the oldest sister?
We were all from Florida. We all grew up in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's the second oldest, yeah.
So Vladek grew up in Florida, and it was just kind of like what he knew. That was home to him, right?
Yes. And then about a year or so before he joined the Marines, he went to Texas and lived with Carrie there. Carrie was in Texas for a while because he wanted to be able to enlist in the Marines with the California base instead of, is it South Carolina?
Yeah.
If you live in Florida, it'd be South Carolina. So he went with Carrie for a while and then enlisted. And then, he grew up in Florida, majority of till he graduated-ish, and then Texas and the Marines, and then Orlando, then Detroit, Michigan, then Nassau, New Hampshire, and then Orlando again.
So the place he seemed to thrive the most was Michigan.
Yeah, and he also did very well in Texas. Like, he always talked highly about his time there. He was working like 2 or 3 jobs at one time when he was there. I think it was it the Dallas Cowboys?
That was one of his side jobs, but the job that he had the longest was like a door manufacturing company he was working with, I believe. But he was doing great there with, keeping jobs, and he was really like preparing himself to go to the Marines. So he got himself physically fit, and he would go to the training center regularly to study for whatever tests he had to take to become a Marine. And so he was very goal oriented when he was in Texas.
So now we're looking at 2001, where he moved back in with your father. And that was, you say, late summer, was it late summer 2020 or late summer 2020? Okay, so he had been living there over a year before he disappeared, right?
Yeah, a year and a couple months.
So can you talk to me a little bit about what was going on with him as far as getting into the religion and giving away his tablet and his cell phone? Did you guys grow up religious, or is this something new? Did he start attending a church? I mean, where did that come from?
Yeah, so we grew up in church Christian, going to church every Sunday. But kind of since COVID, Dad and Vladek didn't really go to a church. Dad has preconditions that they were trying to avoid him picking up anything in too many public areas with COVID going on. So Vladek was really, he said he was watching a lot of YouTube sermons. And at the beginning of 2021 is when he really had a hyper focus on heaven and saying things like the things of this world are a distraction and why are we here when we can just be in heaven. And right around that same time, he started doing a lot of what I would call, I guess, outreach, helping the homeless community. He was known to bring meals to individuals, occasionally bringing them to a movie, sitting down with dinner with them. And Dad and Vladek would also go out to eat often. So when they would go out to eat, and Vladek would start up a conversation with the waiter or waitress, and if he heard that they were struggling anyway, he would leave a significant tip. And even when they had gone back to Claremont for a couple weeks for a doctor's appointment for my dad, they had stayed at this hotel, and he had talked to the maid there and heard that she was going through some things, so he even left a large tip there for her. And Dad was financially supporting Vladek completely at the time. Vladek wasn't working, he wasn't going to school, and Dad was at a place where he could, and it seemed to be giving Vladek a purpose. So he was fine with, however Vladek wanted to use that money to help others, kind of thing. And Vladek seemed to really, find a purpose with it and enjoy helping others. And that's kind of what he did. And then, he did give his iPad away, and he didn't want materialistic things anymore, which was odd because, it was kind of like a switch in 2021 where he was very minimalistic. And growing up, he's always, like a typical guy, he wants the name brand shoes, the Nike shoes, the Jordans, the name brand clothes, the newest cell phone that's out, kind of thing. But that all kind of did a switch at the beginning of 2021, and just, saying things like, it's a distraction, I don't need it, I just want to be in heaven. He ended up breaking his phone a few months before he disappeared. It was an Android smartphone. And Dad told him, he's like, well, you need, Vlad told Dad that he broke it because it was a distraction. And Dad said, well, you need something, you got to get a replacement. And Vladek kind of refused for the longest time. Dad and Irina finally convinced him. He's like, you have to get something. So he ended up getting just this basic flip phone. And he had been without a phone for about 5 weeks, I want to say. And then when he got the new phone, he got a new number. And that's the phone that had been left behind at the apartment. When my dad got back from the trip, it was still there.
So his original cell phone, has it ever been located or found, or?
The one that he broke?
Yeah, the one that he said that he broke, does it, because you said it was about 5 weeks prior to his disappearance, or before he got the phone, the new phone?
Yeah, a couple months, I want to say.
Okay.
And I think he just threw it in some trash can somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where it ended up at.
Okay, so that phone's never been located.
Yeah, that was in August, and then he got his flip phone in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious because that might hold information of something, if you could access that. And I did read somewhere where you all were trying to access some other digital platforms. I don't know if anything ever came of that.
Yeah, so for the smartphone, I was trying to get more information off of it, but it was a few months. It was probably 4 months after the fact of when he broke it. And I called the company and they said they only keep data or something for 3 months. So they could only give me the phone records, the call history kind of thing. They couldn't get me any more off of the smartphone. We've been trying to kind of gain access to his social media accounts, even though Vladek he didn't really use social media for like posting stuff. He has been known in the past to message people through their messaging softwares, whether it's Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger, is how he would talk with some family members through that way, but we haven't been able to gain access there.
Everything that I've seen or read about Vladek, it seems like social media wouldn't have been good for him because he's more of a face-to-face. I want to talk to you. I want to find out about you. Tell me now while I'm here seeing you, not on digital print or anything like that. He just was more of a face-to-face kind of person.
Yeah, quality time is definitely very important to him.
And he enjoyed video games also, so if it was like an online game, then,
Yeah, and the online gaming, that gives you the option to be like involved with somebody and actually communicate directly with them. It's not like, hey, I'm going to leave you a post and send messages. It was like a direct verbal contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
I assume so. He had like a PlayStation, so I'm not sure exactly the setup because I never really used PlayStation. But I'm assuming, yeah, he probably had some online gaming where he would chat with people that way too.
Now, has anybody looked into maybe had he made any connections through online gaming, like any significant connections, friends that he may have met in real life or anything like that?
I'm not sure how to go about that. We did have a nonprofit that was helping us called Night Owl Recon, and we had sent the PlayStation there to see if they could get access and figure out the password to sign in to see if he was talking with anybody, but they weren't able to get into it. I know we've posted on like Reddit boards for like random things like PlayStation to see if, might get lucky of finding someone that might know him, but haven't really had a whole lot of success.
I want to think about that. I want to think about if there's any way. I wonder if you could contact PlayStation directly, and I'm sure that the police might have to get a warrant for that, but
that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Like, is hold up by a warrant, like social media accounts, everything, and the police won't issue warrants.
Yeah, they say because there's nothing that happened as a crime, so legally they're not allowed to request any kind of search warrants or do any subpoenas.
Yeah.
So law enforcement doesn't believe that there was any crime committed here. Is that correct?
I haven't found any evidence to show a crime committed, no.
Okay, everyone. Please tune in tomorrow for part 2 of this story. In the meantime, if you have any information about the disappearance of Vladek Hasel, please get in touch with the Orange County Sheriff's Office at 407-254-7000. All right, everyone, that's it for this episode.
Please remember to check out our website for links to all of our social media, our Patreon, our merch store, and much, much more.
And please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, thank you all for listening
To Paradise After Dark.
Dark, dark, dark.